Welcome to SBRtv. I'm Peter Loshak. We're doing a special industry interview right now with Professor I. Nelson Rose, who's a world-renowned expert on gambling law, who's done several interviews with us over the years about the legalities of sports betting and internet gambling. And we're talking with him today to get his take on the recent announcement by the U.S. Department of Justice that they'll be dealing with certain aspects of internet gambling differently in the future. So Professor Rose will shed a little light on exactly what happened and what the long and short-term ramifications of the announcement might be. Professor Rose's website is gamblingandthelaw.com. Professor Rose, thanks so much for doing this call with us.
Well, terrific. Thank you for inviting me.
All right, so everyone's read about this, everyone's heard about it. They're not quite sure what actually happened and what the future might hold. So what happened? Sports betting's legal now? The UIGEA is overturned? What did the Department of Justice say?
No. Sports betting is not legal, and I keep getting emails from people in Utah who say, "Oh, can I do sports betting now?" And I want to write back and say, "You're in Utah. You'll never be able to do sports betting." Technically, what happened was that there are some state lotteries. The Wall Street Journal said there's 5, but there's actually 8 state lotteries that are doing mail order and online subscriptions for lottery tickets, and they wanted to use payment processing from out-of-state banks and payment processors like PayPal. Mm-hmm. And but what really happened was that the UIGEA created a conflict in federal law, and I think President Obama figured this is a great gift to the states to give them hundreds of millions of dollars to help balance their budgets and create thousands of jobs. What the Department of Justice did was they basically reversed their pretty extreme positions they had taken. The Wire Act, they had held that the Wire Act covered all forms of gambling, even legal gambling, if a wire happened to cross into another state temporarily. Mm-hmm. And what this decision says is, no, the Wire Act is only concerned with bets on sports events and races, and they don't care if a wire happens to cross into another state. It's got to be truly interstate or international. But reading more into it, it turns out there are no other federal laws that impact legal state gambling, except for the lottery statutes, and the state lotteries already have an exemption. Horse racing already has an exemption. The only law that covers legal internet gambling is the Wire Act, and now it's limited to bets on sports events and races and international. So what this means is that the states are now free to legalize just about every form of gambling intrastate, plus they can make compacts and do interstate and even international gambling. For sports betting, the interesting development is there are 9 states that have various forms of legal sports betting. They can now all go on the internet. Now they have to do intrastate, but Nevada is already up and operating, and so you can do internet sports betting as long as you're physically in the state of Nevada. I expect we're going to see Delaware and some of the other states follow. And then the other development, which was completely separate from the Department of Justice announcement, was that in New Jersey, the voters approved legalizing sports betting, so they're going to challenge the other federal statute, the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act, which in court, which prevents any new state from legalizing sports betting. I think that statute is going to be declared unconstitutional, so we're going to see a lot more sports betting intrastate and on the internet.
All right, so what it seems to me is that, maybe from a practical standpoint in the immediate future, nothing much has changed with regards to sports betting, but it's clearly, a step in a different direction, which may lead to more steps. I mean, it seems like there are chinks are forming in the armor around the prohibition of sports betting online in the United States. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty accurate. The first action will be by the state lotteries doing their traditional games, only selling them on the internet. The big question is how much are they going to do instant lottery tickets like scratchers, but on your home computer? And if you have a instant lottery ticket on a video screen, it's awful similar to a slot machine.
Right.
I think they're going to look at poker, but I think for the most part, legally and politically, they're going to have to not do poker. But then the state legislatures are all going to be looking at this. But the state legislatures are looking at legalizing sports betting too.
Right.
Now that it was approved by the voters in New Jersey, and that there's the court challenge to the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act. I think it's possible you might see some sports betting developing pretty quickly, like internet sports betting in Delaware, because they can already do it, and it's run by the state lottery.
So the Department of Justice made an announcement that they're defining certain terms a certain way? Or
First of all, the decision is legally not that strange, because there were court cases that already said, hey, this is the law. And the Department of Justice said, well, it's not bound by it because it wasn't a party. Well, I'm not a party too, but I'm not going to ignore, federal court decisions that say the Wire Act is limited to bets on sports events and races. The problem was when the Republicans controlled both houses of Congress and the presidency, Bill Frist, who was then majority leader of the Senate, rammed through the Unlawful Internet Gambling Enforcement Act, which expressly says intrastate betting of any kind is legal, and it doesn't matter if a wire happens to cross into another state. You've got the Wire Act, which has been interpreted at least since the George Bush era, as saying it covers all gambling and it covers wires that happen to cross into another state. So there's a conflict between these federal statutes. And what the Obama administration did is to get out of the conflict. It said there's no conflict if we go along with the court decisions and say, okay, the Wire Act is limited to sports bets.
Right.
Therefore, the UIGEA, it's irrelevant if a state lottery like the District of Columbia wants to do internet poker and the wires happen to cross into Virginia and back again. It doesn't matter. Poker doesn't fall under the Wire Act, so there's no conflict.
All right. So could the Department of Justice then, say if the winds change in a year or two, go back on what they just announced recently?
It's always possible for any administrative agency to change its mind, but for something like this from the Department of Justice, it would be really unusual. I don't see them taking something that's not that important to them, which is legal gambling. And remember, this is state legal gambling, and then trying to impose federal law, even if the Republicans win both houses of Congress and the presidency. I just don't see them doing it. Besides the fact that they would be going against the overwhelming majority of the court decisions that say the Wire Act is limited to sports.
Right.
Remember, there actually are 9 states that allow various forms of sports betting. We know Nevada is the most important.
All right. Well, thanks for shedding a little more light on this and clearing it up a little bit more for us. That's I. Nelson Rose, Professor I. Nelson Rose. His website is gamblingandthelaw.com, and that's where you can sign up for his blog newsletter. Thanks so much, Nelson.
Great. Thank